across a preprint server filled with lots of different preprints. Traditionally, you might rely on things such as journal name or peer review to determine if you can trust the research. But without these and other traditional indicators, how do you know that the science in a preprint is trustworthy? Before we go through what to look for, let's take a minute to talk about why the traditional metrics are poor proxies for quality or trustworthiness and why you shouldn't rely on them, namely journal name and peer review. Traditionally, you may have relied on journal name or brand as a marker that a piece of research could be trusted. However, this isn't a very reliable marker as business models and journal policies can change. In the past decade, the rise of article processing charges and the gold open access business model have created perverse incentives for journals to publish as many articles as possible, often sacrificing editorial quality to achieve this. Journals have also been found to ignore their own policies in order to publish high-profile research. In 2024, Nature went against its own peer review policies to publish the latest AlphaFold study, chasing headlines rather than quality research. Smaller community-run journals may still hold high standards, and within fields may be useful indicators of how trustworthy an article is. But without greater transparency, only field specialists will know which journal brands are particularly high quality. Related to journal brand is the impact factor, one of the most common terms associated with journal names in Google searches. The impact factor measures how many times articles included in a journal are cited within the academic literature in a 2-year period. This is frequently used to measure the impact of a journal and therefore the quality of the science published within the journal. However, the impact factor can be inflated by journals through the inclusion of non-research articles. It is also negotiated by journals. The impact factor can often significantly be inflated by a small number of papers, with one example of a single paper increasing a journal's impact factor from 2 to 49. The impact factor doesn't make any distinction between good, reliable research and retracted or poor quality research, with all of those counting equally towards the impact factor, although from 2025 retracted articles will no longer be included. In short, the impact factor provides no information on the quality or trustworthiness of individual papers. You may also have relied on the presence of peer review. However, peer review is not a reliable indicator of trust on its own. Peer review is not designed to detect fraud, AI-generated papers, or even gross defects. Peer reviewers consistently do not agree with each other more than would happen by chance. The peer review process itself can be subjected to fraud and peer review cartels. This is in addition to the biases that are inherent in peer review. Peer review has no common standards. One journal may differ in expectations to another, just as one reviewer may undertake a much more in-depth evaluation than another. One peer review is a very recent experiment, only becoming common practice in the 1970s, also a period for one of the best albums of all time. Despite this, peer review can and does help authors improve their manuscript, and it can reduce hyperbolic language and overinterpretation. But this is very different from quality control or assessing trust. In fact, you should read peer-reviewed papers as critically as you would read a preprint. So what things should you look for to know if you can trust a preprint? We'll go through a variety of signals that you can use, but do keep in mind that there is no single gold standard signal of trust, and ultimately the only marker of trustworthy research is time. It takes a long time for other researchers to use different methods and come to similar conclusions. Alternatively, it can come out that even a piece of research that is methodologically sound and may not hold up over time, for a variety of innocent and acceptable reasons. That's just the nature of uncertainty in all of science. One key difference between preprint servers is how they screen submitted manuscripts. Some servers, such as bioRxiv, have dedicated affiliates, active researchers who check the submitted manuscripts conform to the server policies. These policies help to limit dangerous research from being shared and ensure that pseudoscience is kept off of the platform. Some servers use AI-based screening processes without human oversight, but not every preprint server has screening processes, and even where they do, this will differ in the approach taken. You should check the specific preprint server for any screening and policies in place. You should also check how the service is funded and governed. While screening shouldn't be too intensive or approach peer review level analysis, a preprint posted to a preprint server without a screening process could be viewed as less trustworthy than those posted to a preprint server with transparent screening in place. Another indicator of how trustworthy a preprint is can be the presence of preprint peer reviews. Alone, this isn't the perfect indicator, but together with other trust signals, peer review has its place. So what should you look for? Who did the review? Do they have appropriate expertise? Is the review thorough? Is the review appropriate and professional? Where is the review hosted? Different preprint review platforms have different criteria. How many reviews are there? Generally, the more people who look at and comment on an article, the better. Preprint peer review can take many forms, some more flexible than traditional journal-organised peer review. This also expands who can write a review. You can find an overview of the different preprint review services on our website. Assessing the quality of peer review comes with its own challenges for non-expert readers. This is one reason why it's best to only consider peer review as one of the indicators of trust rather than the main one. One of the best signals of how untrustworthy a preprint is can, surprisingly, be the amount of attention it receives on social media. Here's a great example from the COVID pandemic. This preprint was posted and within 48 hours had been withdrawn. This was possible as scientists across social media read the preprint and identified fatal flaws. An abnormally high social media response can indicate problems with a preprint. However, a low or modest amount of social media attention is likely not overly informative as to the trustworthiness of the research. It can help to read through a decent sample of linked social media comments, as some scientists write fully fledged peer reviews, as social media attention is also bundled with other forms of attention an article can get, such as citations in blogs or by news organisations. This is known as the Altmetric score. A high Altmetric score can indicate that a preprint has been widely reported by news organisations and cited in many blogs and across social media. These additional context elements are located in a section on bioRxiv. Not all preprint servers will display this kind of information though. Of course, a numerical score does not provide any information on whether the preprint is trustworthy or if it is widely reported because it is not trustworthy. Context is important, and so you should read through a sample of the news reports and blog posts to determine if the coverage is positive or negative, and if the reporters discuss the work with other experts. Generally, the more attention a preprint gets, the higher the chance of uncovering any known problems. You can also borrow a technique that journalists use. When a journalist is trying to assess the trustworthiness of a source, they ask other independent experts, what do they think of the preprint? They also look at the author's backgrounds. Are the authors reliable? Have the authors got lots of previous retractions? Have they published similar things? Nature retracted a paper after 22 years, but it was well known to researchers within the field as being untrustworthy. Such insider knowledge is sadly quite common in academia, and so can be vital to seek out. In all of this, context matters. The indicators discussed so far can all be positive or negative, and so you cannot rely on their presence and must read through and explore these markers more. Only then can you determine how much you can trust a given preprint. On some platforms, these trust indicators can be difficult to find, if at all. However, on bioRxiv and medRxiv, these are linked in the context box. We focused on external indicators of trust, but there are also elements within the preprint itself that you should look for. These are things that the authors can do to help improve trust in their work, mostly by being transparent. A key action authors can take is to include their data in a usable, accessible form stored in a specialised repository. Not every study will have data suitable for this, but almost all should have data within supplemental files as a minimum. Does this data conform to FAIR principles? Is it findable? Is it accessible? Is it interoperable? And is it reusable? If you're not an expert, then you on your own must take the presence of such storage of data as a sign of trust. This isn't always perfect, but authors who deposit their data are at least making it slightly easier for others to identify problems. Similarly, authors who employ computational analyses can deposit their code into specialized repositories. Often this is GitHub and allows readers and other scientists to download the exact code used. This means you could download the code and you should produce the same results as the authors. If you have the skills, then you can also ensure that the analysis used by the authors was appropriate. Authors can also deposit the methods they used into specialized repositories. For the life sciences, this is still very rare, as most authors will simply report their methods as part of the manuscript, as they have done for decades. Authors who only write limited methods or those with essential steps missing could be viewed as untrustworthy, although this would only really be known to experts. Protocols.io is one such example of a methods repository. These are more trustworthy than methods reported within a preprint, as the full protocol is much more detailed. If you're a researcher, then perhaps the best way to gain trust in preprints is actually to get directly involved with them. Having positive experiences and a better understanding of preprints not only reinforces a better and more accurate opinion towards them, but this can demonstrate that preprints are generally trustworthy. We've explored multiple different ways of trying to gauge how trustworthy a preprint is. But if you're still concerned, then let us take a step back and look at the reliability of preprints more broadly. An ever-increasing number of studies have been performed now that aim to address this question of how reliable preprints are. These studies answer this question by comparing preprints to their journal-published versions. Each study takes a slightly different approach to assessing this, but they all show the same results. Preprints are comparable to their peer-reviewed versions. Most undergo limited changes upon publication. This means that you can trust preprints as much as you trust the published literature. Indeed, the tips in this video equally apply to published papers. We recommend reading any scientific output critically and try to assess how trustworthy and reliable the findings are.
If you want to learn more about preprints, then check out Rippling Ideas, an advocacy and consulting organisation led by the world-leading preprint experts with a people and evidence-driven approach that you won't find anywhere else. Head to ripplingideas.org to learn more about preprints and see even more resources. Sign up to our newsletter to keep up to date with our latest efforts and a monthly roundup of relevant news. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button below too.